Hey, hey! Bonjour, hi! Je vais faire la présentation en anglais ce matin puisque la majorité des gens ici ne comprennent pas le français. So I'm going to do my presentation in English because most of the people here this morning don't understand French. So, hello everyone. Welcome back. We're really happy this morning to have special guests who went through great lengths to be with us this morning. We're going to dedicate this morning to the situation in Ukraine and in general in Eastern Europe because we have 3 guests from Ukraine, Diana, Andriy, and Dasha, and Mark is going to be hosting. Mark is from Vilnius, originally from Britain, but you know, let's not talk about that. He's naturalized. Well, I don't know if he is, but I think he's, you know, yeah, he's Lithuanian, exactly. So Mark is going to give us a talk about how to nightify the night, how to mobilize for your community, your nighttime community, to make changes. So I'm going to give you the mic right away, Mark, and I hope you have a good time. And yeah, Mark, Adam, Harold.
Thank you. Thank you, Mathieu. First of all, I must say a big thanks to Mathieu and all the organizers for putting the issue of Ukraine so high on the agenda and so prominently. We really appreciate it, and even if the flight's long, then we're very happy to come all this way to talk to you about the situation over there. It's very important to all of us that people outside Eastern Europe understand more about what's happening. And right now, it's the most important thing that's happening in the whole world. So thank you very much for coming to this session, even though it's the first session after the first night. And when I saw the lineup, I thought how normally in conferences I see the morning of the second day, and I think, no one's going to go to that guy's presentation. And this time it's me. So I'm very appreciative, doubly appreciative that you've come here to listen to this very important presentation. First of all, I'm going to tell you a little bit generally about what I've been doing in Lithuania and my approach and my philosophy about how you can change your city for the better. So the main thing that I wanted to do was to write a toolkit for activists and people, beginners all over the world who are trying to nightify their city. So I thought, this is a great idea, I'll write a toolkit. But then I understood when I started writing the book, I started one small chapter about democracy, because I thought, you know, that's important. And that small chapter so far is about 90% of what I've written in the book. And it turns out that my approach is very much pro-democracy and how you can use the freedoms that you have in a democracy to make a lot more change in your city than maybe you imagine. So I'm not going to talk much about noise regulation today, sorry. I'm going to talk about activism and how you can activate people. The clicker works like that. That's the down. Doesn't make any difference. There we go. Okay, so this is like most of my book in one slide. I asked the question, who actually runs the city? When you are an activist, you see a problem, you want to make a change, you think, you know, if I was running this city, then everything would be great, everything would be different. But who actually runs the city? Well, politicians think they run the city. When I was not a politician and I wanted to make a change, I decided to run for election. And I was elected to the City Council, so I had 2% of the votes deciding on what happens in the whole city. And I thought, this is awesome, now I'm a politician, politicians make policy, I'm going to change the city. Actually, I found out that politicians do a lot of talking about what they would like to do, but the actual change is all made by the administration who actually carry out the things that they're supposed to be carrying out. And so people have a misconception that politicians actually run things like build the swimming pool and the kindergartens with their bare hands. But no, all of the work is done by the administration. So I was an elected politician, I was thinking I had a lot of power, but actually whenever I came up with an idea, I would then have to keep calling the administration and checking whether they were actually doing it. And then sometimes I would find out that the mayor disagrees and the project's being cancelled, and there's nothing I can do, even though I was elected. So that's maybe the first point I want to make. And Damon, who's also here from Vilnius City Council, she made exactly the same point yesterday in her presentation, that really the problem is normally in getting the administration to do the work. And why that's a problem is because this is a completely new issue, like the nightlife regulation. Even if we think we've been talking about it for 5 years, 10 years, most of the people that we're talking to in power have never heard of it at all. Or maybe now they've started to hear about it, but they think it's a joke. We're at like that stage, like nightmare, ha ha ha. So when that word was first used in Vilnius, one of the other politicians from a very conservative party said, well, I like getting up early in the morning, so I'm going to be the morning mayor. And people laughed and thought this was funny. So you're probably at that situation, and that means that the administration, that lands on their desk, they have to do this thing, they don't really know why, they see there's not much political support for this, so they just leave it until tomorrow. And they don't actually get much done. Unless there is public support, and then maybe the mayor is worried about his re-election, and then he will tell the administration, you need to do this thing because it's important for my re-election. So that's normally how you get stuff done, and the only time when I really got the mayor behind me was when there was a very big vote happening on a completely different issue, and the council was split 50-50, and my vote was the deciding vote. So he invited me to his office for the first time in my career on that day because he needed my vote. And that's the only way I got anything done for nightlife, was when he desperately needed my vote. I didn't have enough public support, so he could ignore most of my ideas because he knows that he looks outside the window, he doesn't see a big protest, he knows he can kind of leave that issue. Even though he says nice words about nightlife, he knows he doesn't really have to activate and get things done. So the third point on this slide is actually the most important, and I think people forget it all the time, is that actually the city is run by people of the city. They ultimately are the ones that decide what goes on. And sitting around complaining about what politicians are doing over there gets you nowhere. But mobilizing people so that now you have dozens, hundreds, thousands of people around you, that's how you get noticed by both the politicians and the administration. So that's the... Okay, I'll say next slide. Okay, so actually, I told you I'm not going to talk about noise regulation. A lot of the work that I've done in Vilnius when I'm advocating for nightlife has been social issues or political issues that I show the nightlife community comes together and has a voice and exists. So we don't come together to protest about noise regulation or being shut down or alcohol licenses. We come together and protest about other things. And this gives the public, the newspapers come, the public see that people from that nightlife community of hedonists and drug users actually are out in the daylight, in the street, and they have passionate views about some problems, and they exist as a political entity. This is an immigrant in Vilnius from Ecuador. He's called Fabian. He was beaten up by two Nazis who were shouting Lithuania for Lithuanians. And the police kind of didn't really think that this was a hate crime. So they announced that yes, there's been an incident, someone was involved in a conflict, like as if he started it, but we don't see any hate crime here. And then we organized a protest, and eventually they had to recognize that it needs to be invested as a hate crime, and they caught the bastards, and we won. But what I wanted to say that is most important is that you run the city, you decide what happens in your city. You are allowed, in a democracy, to stand in the middle of the park, even if you're an immigrant, and criticize the police. You can do that. I don't know why people don't do that more, actually. It's quite easy to do. This is the people that came to our protest to support Fabian. In the background, you can see what used to be the KGB and Nazi Party secret headquarters. In the basement, there's a prison where people were tortured and shot to death. So right in front of that building, we're having a protest against the police. Totally legal, totally okay in a democracy. Yeah, sorry, I forgot I'm not doing this thing, am I? So this is a really young guy. He'd never organized a protest before. I said, okay, you organize this protest. I'll teach you how. We'll go to the municipality, you fill out the forms, you present the project, you get the permission, you give a speech. First time he'd done anything like that, and he pulled it off brilliantly. So I activated another guy. Instead of organizing it myself, I said, you do it. So he really enjoyed this. I hope he's still doing a lot of political stuff. That was the first thing, his first step. This is me writing Vilnius with a heart on a sign. Another thing, I don't know why people don't do this more often, you can write anything you want on a sign and walk around. And we've seen videos in Russia where people, even without a sign, are immediately arrested. But here we are protesting against the police, and I'm writing a whole bunch of signs, and nobody can stop me. And that feeling is why I love democracy and why I live in Lithuania, because we're allowed to do this. Next slide. This is the mayor coming to the protest against the police. So in a democracy, the mayor can decide if he wants, that he wants to support this immigrant and come and join us and make a speech, not criticizing the police too much, of course, but he came to the protest against the police. Also on the right here she is the Equal Opportunities Ombudsman of Lithuania. So a lot of people that came to that protest ended up in more powerful positions in future, and now we have good connections with them, and we can do a lot of stuff, even if we're from the nightlife scene. Of course, human rights are important, so now we have some good connections from this protest. Next slide. Before I go over time, there's the mayor looking at me. And there's a rainbow flag, because in a democracy, you're allowed to have a rainbow flag in a protest against the police in front of the previous KGB prison. Next slide. And in a democracy, at the end of the protest, the police, who were guarding the safety of the people protesting against the police, stand and smile for a photo with a rainbow flag in a democracy. So this is an example of the most extremely democratic photo I've seen. Also, I hope if you've heard anything about Eastern Europe and homophobia, yeah, we have problems with that. But in a democracy, the police, even if he's a homophobe, I don't know if he is, he's happy to guard our safety, and they're very proud to do that job. We have good relations with the police because we talk to them, we interface with them through the medium of protesting against them. So, next slide. I think we get to this is for Belarus. As soon as problems started happening in Belarus, we decided to make a rave to support freedom in Belarus. So, in a democracy, you're allowed to put a sound system in the park, all legal, and play whatever music you want. No one's telling you which records are allowed, which records are not allowed. You're allowed to write things on a sign and pose in front of it. And the next slide, I think, is the last photo. And this is what we made. So we're trying to promote nightlife. We're trying to get people and politicians to maybe listen to us, to maybe have sympathy, maybe want to solve our problems. And they don't know we exist because we're always underground late at night. But what we did as a nightlife association is we organized this protest in support of Belarus. It was like a family picnic. People were there with their kids. Everyone's having a good time. Everyone's listening to electronic music. Politicians came to this protest and saw that these are like this is the nightlife people. Like they all look kind of nice. They all look okay, and they're all supporting Belarus, and they're supporting freedom and democracy, which is very important to politicians and very important to conservative politicians, who had to admit that maybe we were doing the right thing. And at the same time, there was a protest organized by one of the conservative politicians that had like 50 people standing around outside the embassy, whereas we had 1,000 people in a park, and when it got dark, we had a rave. And it was the biggest show of support for Belarus at the time. So I always show this example because I think it gave us such a big boost with the public and with the community. And it wasn't directly arguing about nightlife. We weren't standing there saying, reduce our businesses' taxes. We weren't standing there saying, let us make some noise. we were standing there saying we support Belarus. And then when later we're in discussions with politicians, they remember this thing and they're more on our side. In fact, the leader of one of the political parties came to this event, said it looks like it's the event of the year, it's the most important thing she's seen at the time, and later she became the economy minister. And when she was the economy minister, we had to talk to her about subsidies for nightlife businesses that had been shut down. So in the end, I got the direct help. We actually got money for the industry, maybe easier or faster, because we'd made a pro-democracy protest and shown the community that we exist and we're nice people. So next slide, I think it's coming to the end. This I promote everywhere. If you're wondering where to send money to Ukraine, we have some options for you. You're free now to take out your phone and write this down. This is Music Saves UA. This is a fund which was started by one of Zelensky's guys and the Events Association of Ukraine. They have a humanitarian fund. They turned a venue into a warehouse. They're distributing food and medicines and things like that. So we already have Livecom in Germany and the Nightlife Association in the UK are joining and supporting this fund because it's musicians and music people giving to music people who are working in Ukraine. Next slide. Probably the most important thing. You're going to hear later of people from Mariupol, which definitely needs help. So this is the place where you can send money directly to the people that you're seeing today, so you know that your money's going into the right hands. Okay, so that's the advert. I think that means we need to move on to a discussion of nightlife in places that have less democracy and nightlife in places that have absolutely no democracy at all. So I'm going to forget who's next on stage, but she's moving already, so it's Diana. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Diana.
Hi, it was so inspiring to hear what you, Mark, showed us, because it's really the same as it was in Mariupol, just the same, because we were professionals of creative protest. In Mariupol, we were known for this, we even issued the board game, so we are the professionals. And we had a lot of democracy there in Mariupol and in Ukraine. We don't even need any paper to be issued to any of authorities in order to run any kind of protest. So we even issued a book and so on. So thank you for that. And it was really like Mariupol. So yeah, let me speak from my heart, as it say. Hi, my name is Diana Burke. I'm an activist, curator, and conceptual artist, and the founder of art platform 2 in Mariupol, Ukraine. It's still hard for me to say was about the space, about platform 2. So if I hope you don't mind and allow me to tell about it as if it still exists. I will put the video of our art residency, please, you can just play it, of one of our art residencies several years ago. Without, no sound, you don't need, just let it play. Yeah, the first one. No, that first one. Yeah, just let it play. I didn't want to make slides of PowerPoint presentation, clicking and saying, that is how it was and that is how it's not anymore, so so let it just play so that you can see the atmosphere of our like art life or cultural life back in Mariupol a couple of years ago. Maybe my speech and the image will be not matching and maybe inconsistent, but I think it's okay because our life is really inconsistent and we are living in this dissociation and derealization right now. And also, I don't want the world to memorize Mariupol as only the ruin, the fire, mass graves, deaths, and terror and genocide. That is how it looks now in news for 3 months. So I just think it's important to know how it was before, that it was life, it was culture, it was vivid, it was really vital. So yeah, let it just be. You can see one of the parties. Yeah, okay. Let me first say a couple of words about the city itself. This is, Mariupol is the easternmost city in Ukraine, the farthest from Kiev or any other big city, and it's the closest to Russia, unfortunately. It's a heavy industrial mogul with two giant metal steel combinates plants, so you can realize how it's kind of conservative city, very industrial, as of sea, standing on the sea, and the most important now is that it is situated 20 kilometers from the front line, and I'm talking of 2014 war that had started 8 years ago. And Mariupol was always on the edge of this war, and maybe that's why I chose to relocate there after 2014, after my hometown Donetsk was occupied, and I had to flee as an activist from my home. And I just ended up in Mariupol because I felt that everything is possible there, and making changes I thought it would be more visible. Just imagine this city of 500,000 population on the sea, and at the same time with such a little bit of Soviet nostalgia, a little bit of conservative, mindset back from Soviet Union, and at the same time, just giant metal steel combinates. It's just such a crazy mix, but very, very. It made me feel like this is a spot of power. This is the city that made my character upgrade. That's what I thought. And I never went to Kiev, Odessa, Lviv, or any other city that people chose after relocating from occupation, from Donetsk. So it was, a crazy decision, actually. Everyone asked me why, and I don't know why. And there, in Mariupol, in 2015, me and my friends, the team, organized an NGO, non-government organization, non-commercial organization, that was aimed to make social, cultural changes to fight for democracy and freedoms, because we felt it was really needed there. Although, in the city near war, industrial city near war, it felt that maybe, it was, many locals thought it was not very appropriate at war, to talk about human rights, human freedoms, about cultural changes, about nightlife or anything like that. So it was rather provocative to start with modern art, to start with freedom and promoting freedom, but still we did. Nevertheless, we opened the art space we called it Platform 2. 2 is an exclamation in Ukraine that can be translated as something like that. It's not translated, sorry. But yeah. And what we were doing in 2 for last 6 years, in May, we were opening in May, so it's 6 years now. We were fighting for human rights, freedoms, and with art residencies, with curating exhibitions, with hosting events, with the only thing that was for us the most important is to address topics that were unpopular and uncomfortable, like gender equality, LGBTQ rights, or reflecting on Soviet past, or what else? Right to the city, right to the space, and so on. Yeah, and we also started creative education program for local youth. We called it like vulnerable group, youth from vulnerable groups, teenagers from vulnerable groups. Yeah, and we, that's what we were doing for 6 years. I would say that TU was a queer space in the region where you shouldn't even mention the word queer. About nightlife. We thought that raves, parties, and night culture was another very important part of fighting for democracy. And we really hosted and made and organized many parties first years of our existence. But of course, we ran to the problem of neighbors who TU was situated in a historical center, a former gym and former church. So we had around just normal private houses that just random people, private people living. So they, of course, were complaining. They called police because of the noise, because of loud music and so on. And we had to adapt. We either invited them to our space for the rave, or we had to negotiate, or we made like a daytime parties. So it was another challenge. Yeah, we managed to run a super cool parties in Mariupol, and it was, you know, it felt crazy for some, to some extent, because people were coming. The stars of the DJs and musicians came to perform like 20 kilometers from war. Yeah, so it was, of course, we were attacked by radicals who didn't disapproved of our existence, of our fighting for LGBT freedoms and so on. But that was pretty much all the problems we had. No, sorry, we also had one big problem. Ecology, Azovstal, the big plant, that it was polluting, and we were not happy with what this place, with how it impacted our air and life. So that was all our problems. Yeah. Okay. So, and maybe the most important thing about Platform 2 was that we managed to create the community of very talented, bright, cool kids, teenagers that felt themselves like home in TU, because they never felt fit to normality. And it's in an industrial, very paternalistic city, militarized city. It's really hard to express yourself. So we managed to create this beautiful community, and they were studying like different creative practices. For example, Dasha was teaching them DJing, and we were really expecting of new generation of very bright kids and stars to be born like very soon, because we've actually created this community. I thought maybe we can get to the next, but okay. So yeah, we were only hoping for best. We had the last party at New Year, and all the kids that were studying DJing were playing there. And then we went for the small vacation, like for 1.5 month vacation. And then, yeah, 24th of February came. Yeah, okay. So, and actually this video it was the last documentation made of Mariupol this winter. It was made by an artist, Masha Pronina, on one of the art residencies, and she wanted to show the contrast between actually the Azovstal plant and our space. Like, you know, something grassroots and underground versus big corporation with money and power. Yeah, and now it's more symbolic. When we see it, it has just totally different meanings. Yeah, so she just contrasted how kids were talented kids versus production of metal. So now you will see a lot of Azovstal. And on 24th of February, the new art project, the new art residency was supposed to start. And on 24th of February, me and my husband, we went to the store to get a couple of bags of food. And it actually kept us alive for next 10 days when we were in besieged city. Actually, I will show you something. This is the canned food. This one was bought on 24th of February in Mariupol. This is the one that was left from 2 bags of food. And I keep it with me just as a reminder of how lucky I am, how privileged I am to be alive, to be, you know, kind of safe. Yeah, because now I feel safe anywhere if I'm not in Mariupol, even any city of Ukraine. So yeah, I just keep it always with me as a symbol. Then, after the invasion started, it became very brutal very soon. I went to our art space wanted to try to evacuate and gather all the arts. We had so much art. We couldn't do that. Post didn't work, no buses could be rented or nothing, so we left everything behind. After 10 days of invasion, Mariupol was already surrounded, blocked, it was sieged, there was no electricity, no network at all, no gas, no heating, no tap water or drinking water. There were no food supplies or medicine supplies. We ran out of everything, and it was only 10th day, while people are still there with the same conditions. So yeah, and we just made this crazy decision of the suicide mission of breaking through Mariupol, because we didn't know whether how heavily it was surrounded and how dangerous was it. So yeah, we broke through. It's another story, and we succeeded, and we are alive. But there were people from our team who stayed longer, and it was heartbreaking to think of them, if they're alive or not, because no network at all. Like Dasha stayed almost a month, and she faced so much atrocities of Russians. So about two, the only thing we know about two now, well, 90% of the city is destroyed by Russians, by airstrike, artillery, bombs, missiles, and so on. But we know that our space is damaged, but still standing. First of all, because we know that from our neighbors. Remember the neighbors, the annoying ones who wanted us to stop and, shut down. But, oh, thank you for showing it. Yeah, it's really what we need now. We gave them keys from our space because all this neighborhood, they didn't have basements, just small buildings without basement. And when there is bombing, you need to be in the basement, and they didn't have it, so we gave them the keys. And what we know is that for a couple of months, two was a shelter for the neighborhood. They were hiding in our basement, and they were sheltering everyone who came, who had their houses destroyed. So it was about 50 people sheltering there. Also, we know from the news on the first channel, Russian channel, that that Russians came to our space. They made a news piece that they found, and I'm citing now, the headquarters of gays and lesbians / the organization of non-traditional orientation. So they came to Chu, they found some, I don't know, rainbow flags, some just normal signs of freedom and democracy. And they were so surprised to say, wow, this is the headquarters of perverts, funded directly from a US president. Okay, well, and our homes are also destroyed. So, but the only thing that, you know, keeps me, gives me some hope is that we had so many arts in Chu, and I really hope that all the people who sheltered there used it for making a fire, and that our arts kept them alive, because there was no heating, it was very cold, and you had to make fire and find some wood. So that's how it's about the way how culture is reinvented at war, that arts can go as a flame for keeping people alive. And it's about how we rethink of our activities. Thanks God, I'm very happy that our team managed to evacuate, and most of our relatives as well. But of course, there are many people who are there left behind, still there. Many people are missing, many people are killed or heavily injured. And most of Mariupolians, they lost everything. They lost, like we lost, all our lives, spaces, homes, and so on. And I don't know why my luck is like this, but I lose home the second time. I mean, come on. I just felt like home in Mariupol, and now I don't have it anymore. Thank you, Russia. So yeah, it's crazy. The most important thing probably are kids that you saw in the previous video, our teenagers, talented, bright youth. Most of them were deported to Russia, because that's what Russia does. When they occupy the city, they deport people, of course, violently. So now our art project, our art residency that was supposed to start on the day of invasion, has transformed to a multidisciplinary project of helping these kids to run through Russia and go to Europe and come to Ukraine. Another thing is like the most challenging art project we worked with is evacuating people from Mariupol, from the besieged Mariupol to Zaporizhzhia, to the closest Ukrainian-controlled city. And this is the whole separate story that even I think Netflix is making a film about it now. So what else we do? We help museums of unoccupied, near frontline and occupied territories to save the historical heritage. We evacuate. Even I just brought a bus from Europe for evacuation purposes to Ukraine. Also we fundraise for Mariupol survivors. And we've managed already to help 400 families who just get out of hell, from hell, on scattered, shattered cars, like if you could see those people, it just, heartbreaking. Scared and hungry and ill after 2 or 3 months in the siege. So, and they need some support, so we managed to support them. It was just a rapid response fund that we organized through PayPal, and so many people donate, so it was only almost $40,000 that we already donated. So I don't know what else to say. This is, our life has changed, and the journalist asked me yesterday, how is nightlife now in Mariupol? And I was, okay, nightlife consists of, killing, raping, torturing by Russians, and in totally dark city because no electricity is yet, and only flashes from bombs. That is the nightlife. So we have to realize that our life has changed, and we have to do all for our victory. So I'm coming back to Ukraine and will just go on, even having no home, but no space, but we have people, we have our team, we have our families alive, and we have our kids saved from hell. So I think it's really real to start all over again. Yeah, but it's still real. So that is maybe it. I was really long, sorry. So yeah, and this is Mariupol. I have Ukrainian flag, and what I wanted to ask, maybe, if you don't mind, after our slot discussion, and do you think, well,
we'll do that at the end, yeah.
Will we make a photo, all of us, with the Ukrainian flag?
I think that's a guaranteed yes.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. We're going to have a bit of a discussion after one more presentation, so we'll see Diana later, and we'll also see Dasha, who was in Mariupol in those projects. I'm the host, so it would be unprofessional of me to cry, but I think I might do anyway. Feel free to be very touched by this story because it's real. And next time, maybe if you're having a discussion about some noise complaints in your city, you can tell the story about how an art center in Mariupol became a bomb shelter for the people who were complaining about the arts center. So that's about the heaviest story that I can take away from this conference. We're going to now hear about a region in Kyiv, a neighborhood, which a long time ago became known as kind of the alternative nightlife center and grew and grew. I was there, I think, 12 years ago, and I haven't been back since, so I want to hear what's been going on there. We're going to be talking about Podil, and the presentation is going to be made by Andrei.
The remote? Does it work, the remote? Yeah, cool. Thank you very much. 2 arrows, okay. Good morning. Thank you all for coming this morning. I know it's hard, it's Friday, second day. My name is Andy. My name is Andrew, but my friends call me Andy. I am a co-owner and creative director of one of the probably most, one of the most influenced clubs in our city, in our neighborhood. And today I'm going to talk a bit about Podil. I believe that you will hear about Podil in the future a lot, so you can tell that you heard it first here on MTL 2424. How to start the presentation? What did I do? No. Boom. Yeah. One more. Yeah, so what is Podil? Basically, Podil literally can be translated from Ukrainian as a downtown, and it's situated on the bottom of the city next to the river. It's a small neighborhood surrounded by green hills on the top of the map you can see, and the river on the bottom, and basically here on the right with the gray buildings, it is all partly abandoned areas with like warehouses and factories and stuff that something is still used, something is being changed to other let's say specifications, and the center is lots of stuff with residential areas, universities, bars, clubs, and all of this. So due to these characteristics of this location, the location itself, the cheap rent, it became a basically hometown of Ukrainian nightlife and underground nightlife. Can I have a second slide, please? One more. Yeah, so this is Podil. This is how it looks like in the morning, early. Next, please. One more. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it eventually became a underground cultural center in the city because of also there is not much residents living there, so you can do some noise, and we don't have the problems that you are talking about here and many other panels, like 24 hours. This for me is a thing, like everything is 24 hours, come on. Yeah, so, what I can say that it's not a surprise that this happens, but I would say that the biggest shift has been happening since 2013, 2014, the Revolution of Dignity, or maybe as you know it as Maidan. So what the Maidan did to Podil and to Ukraine in general is actually give the opportunity to young people get into real business and change them from a simple consumers of entertainment, let's say, culture, to into active actors of this change. Can you go to the next one? Yeah, so slowly this area from very underground, dirty locations turned into vibrant nightlife, tourist attractions kind of things, still keeping its soul deeply inside. And I would say that immediately after the revolution, can we have the next slide? After the revolution, we had first the boom of bars. A lot of young people started to open these ruin bars and Berlin-style bars, as you may say, here and there. The cocktail bars, the craft bar scene exploded, the coffee scene exploded. And what it did to the communities is that before people were hanging out mostly in parks and kitchens and, I don't know, in their close communities, talking just among their friends. And now they moved to bars and restaurants, which become more accessible to young people, and so they started to interact with each other, and this led to a chain reaction of people interacting, talking about exchanging ideas, creating new projects. The projects attract more people, and the list, the things works on. Later, talking about the clubs, all the clubs began as a small grassroots DIY projects with usually temporary locations, always moving here and there. Clubs open, close, open, close. I'm talking about underground clubs because the mainstream clubs were always there, as in every city. But the underground scene, this is actually a photo from our space, from, I don't know, New Year party, I guess. So the club scene was very temporary and very unstable, but when this, and most of these places, they worked illegally, so they didn't have licenses for alcohol or even no official documentation for rent and stuff like that. So after the revolution, people stabilized, they legalized, they went white, and this stabilization of the whole area brought new opportunities for grants and for investments from private investors or whatever. So it led to a huge development. So instead of small tiny areas, now we have a permanent locations that run for like 5, 7, even 10 years. And recently we have been, we got a club, a super club, which has about 5,000 people capacity. Which is probably, and it still remains a rave techno place for underground culture. It's a very queer place, a very queer club. It's people tend to say it's like Kiev's Berghain, but bigger. And I think it's probably one of the biggest clubs in Europe, at least in this league, let's say. So the parties that at the beginning there was like some small parties that were like usually closed by cops by the end of the night now turns into a massive festival that runs for days, and the festivals itself grew as well. So last year, for example, this is the photo from the Brave Factory Festival organized by the Closer Club, one of the oldest like underground clubs in Kiev. They run it on a huge factory of the metro that makes metro like cars and tracks and so on and so forth. This festival last year has gathered 10,000 people despite of ongoing pandemic at the time, and it's their still all-time record. You all probably heard or maybe know of Schema. Schema is a collective from Kiev, from Podil. They started as making small underground parties in the garages and grew up to work with the labels like Boiler Room, Circle, and even export their parties to the ES in 2019, I think, before the pandemic. So this is the Boiler Room that was held in next to the riverside in one of the areas in Podil. I think it was also like 8,000 people at this venue at the party. It's pretty cool. But we don't do only techno, as it may seem from the first glance. We are actually providing spaces for multiple genres to explore for Ukrainian artists, from contemporary London jazz to Memphis rap, reggae, dub, and the list goes on. What I liked about Podil, I lived there for 15 years and I cannot imagine myself moving to any other district in the city, because the Kiev is a big city. It's 4 million population, so very similar to Montreal, I guess, and many like Berlin. It's 6 times bigger than Paris, it's 8 times bigger than Barcelona, it's really big. But the Podil itself is very small. It's like a village inside of the city where everybody knows each other, everybody like knows what's going on, and you don't need to go anywhere further than 15 minutes to reach any place. And it has a lot of community events and community spots, usually even organized by the community itself. So this is like, for example, a flea market organized by one of the residents here in the market, huge marketplace there. And people make art on the streets and stuff like that. It's really interesting how they get budgets and invite artists even sometimes from abroad. I would say that it is a home, it's a place of resistance and social change, because it's probably the most active civil community in Kiev lives here. And people are fighting constantly for human rights, for better urbanism, for better places to live, and so on and so forth. This was a protest. There was a situation, we got a tension between police and local residents. Last year, 2021, the police took advantages of some extra power that they were lent from the government to sustain COVID restrictions. So they use and they abuse this power to, started to raid clubs, bars, and even just stop people for a quick search on the street to get some, extra cash on hand. And the tension boiled up, so we just threw a massive rave in front of the local police department. Just in the broad daylight, just like that. And this led to a series of events. And finally, in November, they basically changed the local chief, local police. Now we have exchanged numbers and even go for a coffee to talk about safety in the district. Pretty cool, So yeah, that was the photos from the rave. That's some of the speakers. And the party was pretty nice. You can check it online. I think it's on Resident Advisor. And yeah, so people I told you that it's one of the biggest active civil communities because people are deeply involved into developing the area. This is, for example, a samosad, which is like self-park. The people basically just occupied a Russian embassy territory, which was abandoned. They don't use it, but they own it. So they and there's just empty space in the middle of the town. They're like, fuck it. So just occupy it and turn it into a park. Just like that. And they sustain it themselves, so the government doesn't take off the trash and stuff. It works just like a self-sustained park with donations and people responsible for taking care of plants and stuff. Really interesting things. So that was how it was before the invasion, before 24th of February, and since that things really got south. Wow, appearance. Is it play? No. Does it play? Anyway, there's supposed to be a video, but we don't have a time for that. So basically, Russia invaded Ukraine. There was a big fight. People were thinking that Kyiv will not stand longer than 3 days. It did. It survived. It got still shelled and attacked by rockets, but in generally, it's relatively safe compared to many other places, compared to Mariupol that you heard about. It's still, I would say, 95.8% maybe of the city, it's still untouched and pretty well maintained. So you're probably asking, what is the nightlife in the city now? What the fuck is going on? So the clubs, they didn't close just like that or relocated on fleet or whatever. They changed a lot. So now the dance floors are basically volunteer headquarters, the same venue, just a year difference. The clubs, they just use their spaces as storages or warehouses for humanitarian aid or infrastructural aid. As you can see, again, the same venue, a couple of months of differences. The bars and the kitchens of the bars and restaurants are now making food for both volunteers, refugees coming from the east and other parts, for people that are involved in the territorial defense units or even for army. Some places, the basements, they are now not a place of fun and hanging out, but a shelters that helps people to survive the aircraft attacks from above. So a lot of things shifted and changed. We, for example, at our place, we also launched a part of that. There's some pictures from our place as well. We also launched a fund radio project. So we tried to give a artist space to perform, even though it's not possible. You cannot play and work at night because of the curfew, but during the daytime, why not? We also do some interviews with experts and try to explain to people who can watch it what is going on in Ukraine in English. So it's pretty nice. Go check it out. It's on YouTube. So probably now, at the end of my presentation, you may think it's touching what I can do. Maybe I want to help. How can I help? So, and how to support all these things, all these projects. And my answer will be pretty simple. It's fundraise. Fundraise is the best way you can support at the moment. And I really invite you not to go to a big fund, because they are slow and bureaucratic, and unfortunately they cannot provide an urgent and direct help to those people in need. So I really invite you to check on this local small fund, because they can really act much faster and they know where the money goes directly to specific people. These are some funds that I decided to highlight. It's all our friends, neighbors, communities and stuff. So Podil Community Fund is what we do. We raise money to sustain our venue, our team, our community, as well as 50% of it we go to an organization that is called 100 Drones to Ukraine, which brings drones that helps us be more effective in the warfare. There is Music Defense Ukraine. It's a fundraising initiative that helps specifically musicians that are involved in the conflict, fighting on the front line, as well as their families. There is Cosmos Taber, a cool guys that do amazing, crazy shit that I would never do because it's absolutely nonsense, but it's amazing, and the way they created them is really nice. But now they are also doing bending metal and sewing the military vests and helping people to relocate. So they're also gathering money. There is the place that not exist, or K41 for short, as we call it, the community fund, doing basically the same as we, raising money to sustain their gigantic 5,000 capacity club, as well as supporting their communities inside Ukraine and outside, find refuge homes and stuff. There's Closer to Ukraine, the Closer Club Foundation, They do lots of stuff. They use their workshop to, provide specific things for the military. They feed people in their restaurants. They help people to, find shelter abroad. Really a lot of stuff. And there is a Ukraine Pride, which is LGBTQ plus organization that now is deeply involved into raising money to help people in Mariupol, the defenders of Mariupol, the soldiers that are fighting in Azovstal, and their families. So check it out and now make a photo if you will be interested. Spread the word, it's very important, and don't stay ignorant because we can find this evil just together and we get some nice support so far, but we don't need to stop, don't need to get bored until, the dragon is dead. Thank you very much for your attention.
This mic is on. Okay, thanks again, Andy. We're just going to set up for a discussion. I can tell you if you have your pass, it has a code on the back. You can scan it now with your phone, and it will take you to the Q&A interface, so you can type in a question. I hope you have some questions for these people. There's no such thing as a stupid question. We'll try and give you the information. So I'm going to open it up myself so I can see if anything comes through. When you open it up, I think the session we're in now is Night Culture in the War Zone. So you can click on Night Culture in the War Zone and there will be a place for you to put a question. Okay, so first of all, we have a new person to introduce. We have Dasha on the end. So please, Dasha, say hello and where you're from and what you do.
Hello, my name is Dasha. I'm from Ukraine, in Mariupol, but I'm originally is Drushkivka, Donetsk region. I am a DJ and teacher DJ for Platform 2, and I am resident Shumrave. This community is Eastern Ukraine, Shumrave party.
Can I just add that maybe you will add that you spent like a month in Mariupol and you survived, and then...
Yeah, that's the next question. How was Mariupol? Please tell the story of you were staying longer in Mariupol than the other members of your team.
Dasha is not very good in English, so we will use
she's very
professional
good.
translator.
I'm so sorry. My translate for Diana. Я була в Маріуполі десь 3 тижні, і це було важко, тому що я побачила дуже багато подій, які досі не вкладаються в мене в голові, і як люди можуть себе так поводити.
I spent in Mariupol 3 weeks, and it was really hard, and I saw so many things and acts that are still unrecognizable and uncomprehendable. That is still hard to imagine and process what I saw about how people can do this to other people.
Ми вимушені були ховатися 4 рази в різних підвалах, якихось бомбосховищах, аби вижити. І ми не мали змоги знайти їжу собі, тільки те, що було у нас та людей, які ховалися з нами у підвалах. І це все було дуже жахливо, тому що...
We had to change locations 4 times to find the better one to hide in a shelter or in a basement. There were 4 times. We had to find and seek for food just to survive, because there were no food supplies around, so we only had what we had on the beginning of invasion, only that amount of food.
Все було дуже важко знайти, включаючи звичайну воду. Ми були змушені збирати сніг в відра і просто від снаряду розірвало трубу з водою, яка для опалювання. І ми мали збирати її, тому що вийти за звичайною водою навіть до криниці не було можливості із-за постійних авіаударів, із-за постійних бомбардувань, і із-за того, що це було просто небезпечно.
Also another challenge was having water and getting water, because there was no tap water since the 1st of March. And we had to be inventive and creative. For example, we melted the snow, we collected snow when it was snowing. In March, when it was still cold. We collected the snow, for example, or another case was when the missile exploded nearby and it damaged the pipes of heating pipes, and there was water inside. So we could, because of this explosion, we could collect some water from the pipes. But the thing is that we couldn't just go and head to the spring or like a well, or where the water was, where it was possible to get some water, because going anywhere was very dangerous because of constant non-stop bombing and shelling. So it was just dangerous to go out of the yard to get some water. So
на початку я казала, що ми 4 рази за ці 3 тижні змінювали місце, де ховалися, тому що кожен раз біля нас будь-яка будівля підривалася, починала горіти, і було небезпечно залишатись там. Тому всі ці 3 тижні, які я провела, я не знаю.
I said that we had to move 4 times. In the beginning, I would just explain that we had to move and relocate because of every time some airstrike or bomb or artillery has damaged the building around nearby, and it was ruined and it was on fire. So of course we decided to move somewhere else because of it was like very risky in these conditions. Can I just add that there was no fire fire service, because Russians did airstrike all the fire stations, and there was no water. So, and you cannot just call firemen because there was no. And electricity devices became a brick, and there was no network. You cannot call anywhere. So yeah, and if there is a phosphor bomb, for example, is getting to the building, then just leave it. It will be burned till the skeleton. It just burns everything, and you cannot do nothing. So it's just my addition. Sorry.
Я дуже рада, що мені пощастило вибратись, і не дивлячись на те, що ще потім 2 тижні я провела в окупації. І насправді це також важлива частина, бо дуже багато людей думають, що якщо в тебе над головою нічого не літає, то окупація то не страшно.
After breaking through Mariupol, from Mariupol, I'm happy that I survived and succeeded in it. But after that, I spent 2 more weeks on occupied areas. And this is important thing to know, that sometimes people think that, okay, if there is no missiles, no bombing, and no artillery around, like in Mariupol, then you can feel safe. No, Mariupol is surrounded. And there are like 200 kilometers of occupation. So when you get out of Mariupol, you have to somehow get out of occupied areas. And Dasha said that she spent 2 more weeks, and there is another danger of being there.
Thank you so much, Dasha, for telling your story. Thank you. I'm sure you found more people today that are thinking about you now and will support you. So, and all of the links that you've given, I hope we'll get some more support for Ukraine. all of the things were on the wall. I mean, if you can find the slide with all of the donation links. You're on it. The last, I think it's the last slide of mine with the PayPal link on it. Let's put that one on the screen. So we have some questions I've seen here, and we're going to start with a question for Andy. How did you get out of Ukraine if you're a male? And I guess how do you feel about it now you're outside?
Good question. I didn't get out because I just went traveling in January with my friends to skip a winter. Because, you know, at the time, of course, everybody was concerned about Russian troops on the border of Ukraine. But this year it got a lot of attention, but it was happening every year. Since 2014, this was like this every year, every winter. There was some new troops here and there, and they were talking about invasion, but it never happened before. I mean, in between 2014 and 2022. So, being a Ukrainian, you don't act as hysterical at the time as Western audience would and did during like January, because you're like, okay, got this Russians like, well, fucking on the border, fuck them, you know, like we just move on with our life and do whatever. We had a lot of plans, preparing summer events, festivals and stuff. So I went to skip the winter to Latin America with my friends, and when the war started, I was in Ecuador, deeply in the jungles. Was planning actually to take ayahuasca the next day. I didn't. Yeah, so we were there, and we basically 2 days we spent on the phone. I think my phone showed me like something like 22 hours of, you know, screen time, trying to help people distantly, finding place to stay, place to how they can move, checking the maps, whatever. And then we just I came to Europe, spent some time with my family that was in Spain, and then I spent time in Europe here and there, trying to bring humanitarian aid to the border, or organizing some fundraising events, concerts, whatever. Tried to put my knowledge and my skills where I can be useful. I never came back to Ukraine because if I go, it's one-way ticket. I cannot go back. For example, in my flat now, there are refugees living from the east that don't have place to live. So I decided that I can be more useful being abroad and telling you all about what's going on in Ukraine. And it's more practical than me just sitting in my flat thinking about what to do.
Okay, thank you for your answer.
I try to be short.
I'll move straight on because we've got another question just come in. So a good thing that a lot of people hear kind of about, but maybe don't know the detail or the nuances. I think, Diana, maybe I'll ask you, what's the majority language in Kyiv and Mariupol? Maybe and how has maybe attitudes to languages changed recently?
Okay, of course, east of Ukraine is more Russian-speaking, but not only east, but of course in Kiev it's like half and half Ukrainian, Russian, and of course on the west of Ukraine there is mostly Ukrainian, and that's it. That's okay. That's good. Speak whatever you want. There will no problem ever at all in Ukraine in terms of language. It's just
media hype.
It's just Russian propagandist, tool of excusing their all the shit they do. We are saving Russian people. Okay, I'm Russian-speaking Donetsker. I'm from Donetsk. Did you save me? Okay, then I'm in Mariupol, Russian-speaking. I was originally Russian-speaking. But the thing is that right now, during this invasion, that is when this language issue started to be brought up, because people started hating speaking Russian. That's it. So we opt for speaking Ukrainian. Just because, now we started to hate everything Russian, even your mother tongue. So, but it doesn't mean that we don't use it. Of course, it's just like it's an interesting merge and mix of Ukrainian and Russian. Yeah, So it's only now when this problem, when we started hating Russians, when they came to save Russians from, Russian-speaking people.
Yeah, my same thing. My wife is a Russian speaker, but her family was thrown out by the Tsar like 250 years ago because she was the wrong religion. I mean, she hasn't got really any love for Russia, but we speak Russian at home, and that's just a language. You also wanted to say something, Andy?
No, I think Diana perfectly expressed it. It's just like the East is more Russian speaking, the West is more Ukrainian speaking, but people understand both everywhere, and in the middle, in the capital where I live, it's really half-half. So it's like Montreal, I understand, in the matter of language, like a combination of two at the same time, and people live pretty peacefully as far as I see so far in these 2 days. So Kyiv is exactly the same. It's fun to meet people in the bar, and for example, one is speaking Ukrainian, and one is speaking Russian, and one is speaking the mix of both, and third one is speaking something like, I don't know, whatever. And they all speak their own language, and everybody understands each other. So we don't change while we're talking, we can speak both at the same time. Sometimes you start the sentence in Ukrainian, and then you закінчиш це українською мовою, that's the thing. You just ended up in some other language, and it's okay.
But all the social media of all of us are in Ukrainian, of course, like for a long time already. Social media of our institutions, organizations, and our own. I mean, this is kind of a political position, probably.
Okay. I hope that answered whoever's question it was. We have another question. How do you hope to rebuild, and how do you think nightlife can be a part of the healing process after the terrible things that you've witnessed? Are you thinking about rebuilding yet?
Rebuilding the city, you mean?
Rebuilding the whole country, everything that's been destroyed.
Well, the example of the case of Bucha, Irpin, and other cities on the north of Ukraine that were occupied. I don't know if you follow, but there were areas already occupied from the very beginning, and then our troops did deoccupy. Maybe you remember all these terrifying photos of what happened in Bucha and Irpin. So what I mean is that these cities, this area is already starting to rebuild. The utilities are back, the roads are back, demining is back, but it takes so much time. And if we talk about, this case shows that it is really possible, and we have so much support from other countries and allies that are ready to help us. For example, Mariupol Drama Theatre, as maybe you know, that Italian government has promised to rebuild this theatre. The same goes with the maternity ward that was destroyed in Mariupol. But the thing is that in Mariupol, I just cannot process yet of how it could be rebuilt. Well, if you saw, I saw, and I'm watching it every day, and I just cannot understand how could it be rebuilt. But there are so many cases in the history.
Rotterdam, for example.
Yeah,
Rotterdam
exactly.
in Holland was completely destroyed, so they decided we will just build a new city. So I think Mariupol is going to be the case where it's actually it's extremely terrifying experience. The war, it's extremely terrifying. It's also not only killing people, but destroying the cultural heritage here and there. But on the same time, for Ukraine, it can be a nice chance to start over from the blank page and to build cities not with the Soviet perspective in mind, paradigm in mind, a matrix in mind, but also with the new world order, let's say, make it more green from the beginning, make it more accessible to various groups from the beginning, make it more car-free or bike-free, because Mariupol is actually a super flat city. It would be perfect for biking.
Mariupol is good. It was okay with all the greenery and everything. I mean, yeah, it was already okay. We didn't need to change anything. It was.
There is. Trust me, you go to Switzerland, you have a lot of the work to be done. There is some place, or like you go to Singapore,
now?
you know what it is, what is
I've been to Switzerland, Andy. Come on.
So there is a lot of things to be done in general, and I think before in Ukraine was struggling because there was a lot of old things that were there and were hard to change them, and there's also new things coming on top of it, on top of the pie, and you try to maintain the old things with the new things, and they didn't work very well. And I think for some places now it would be possible to really start from the beginning and put all the new technologies that we have into the places and make them are really kind of like the good example of modern, sustainable, green country that can be, that can be built not for yesterday but for tomorrow.
Okay, but the question, there's more questions come in the similar theme about rebuilding, but also healing, because you said like if you've now hating Russians and hating the sound of the language, but still there's a lot of people there that are Russian speakers. So do you think that nightlife will have a role in the distant future when things are being rebuilt? Do you think that nightlife can have a role to get people back together again? And even was there even a scene before the invasion where Russians and Ukrainians were partying together, or Russian DJs were playing in a Ukrainian party? Was there ever that kind of unity?
Yes. Unfortunately,
Was a problem.
Unfortunately, yes.
We were
because when you invite Russian DJs to play in your party, when you have an ongoing war since 2014, when you're part of your territory, Crimea and Donbass, are occupied by Russia, this is not a very ethical thing to do, in general. And this is what we try to explain now with our music community to other promoters and venues and festivals all around the world, that it's not a good thing to give a platform to perform for Russian artists like Nina Kravitz, who are deeply in support of Putin regimes, when you don't give any opportunity to perform for Ukrainian artists on your festivals. So I'm really mad about that on many places and wrote some hate emails here and there from time to time. But yes, there was a problem because some clubs, they didn't care. So they're like, okay, this is Mutabor club from Moscow, it's very popular, just bring it down. And they did a lot of places, and a lot of Ukrainian DJs also went to Moscow to perform here and there, and were judged by other communities. So it was also always a discussion. Now I don't think that we can work with Russians and Russian DJs and Russian artists, Russian platforms in general, until they will change themselves from the inside. We need to see this change in Russians as we saw it in Germans after the Second World War. Because now the Germany is a democratic country when everybody wants to hang out with, kind of, not particularly now in this point, but before a bit, not because the world changes, but because Germany changed from a deep ultra-conservative Nazi state that killed millions of people into a vital, open democracy. If you go to Berlin, you will never believe that this is the capital of, it was Hitler's capital 70 years ago. So I think Russia needs to change first, and then we can talk.
Can I just comment that there is no way of cultural democracy between Ukraine and Russia, and I don't even mean now when the war is on, but after. There is no way that Ukrainians and Russians will be, coming and for this reconciliation events or discussions or like any kind of cultural events together. Because when you ask, I thought you meant Ukrainian speaking and Russian speaking together. But if we talk of Russian artists to do something with Ukrainian. No way. Russian culture has to be banned for years, for decades, because this was Russian culture who really brought up all these atrocities. It was Russian culture, it was Dostoevsky, Tolstoy, all this shit that really came up, that was resulted in what we see, So there was no great Russian culture, and, let it go to hell, and we just fuck off. That's what I want to say to Russia, and no artists.
That's a very good way to end this session, I think. Thank you very much, Diana, Andriy, Dasha. Thank you again to the organizers for highlighting Ukraine. Thanks for coming. Now we're going to have to take a photo with the Ukrainian flag. Yes. So run into the audience.
around because the lights here.
No,
maybe-
we got house lights. Run into the
put the
audience.
house lights
Go
on.
on.
Okay, professional.
Get in the middle.
No, you can go there, and we'll take the
Go
picture.
in the middle.
Wow.
With everyone.
Yeah.
Oh, you want people on stage? It's gonna be.
You go there, it'll be quicker.
Yeah.
Dasha, please.
No, we're gonna take a little break. 10-minute break. No, je vais y aller. Slava Ukrainia. Slava Ukrainia. Yes. Well, Montréal 24. Yeah, now we got it. All right. Well, Montréal 24 and Quebec and Montreal is really proud to support the Ukrainians. So Slava Ukrainia. Thank you for doing this for us. Thank you for taking the time to come and tell our privileged Western audience about your story. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. We're gonna come back at 10:45. Here downstairs, we're gonna talk about the social development goals from the United Nations, and upstairs, there's a panel about open data, so you can split up. And on peut se revoir dans 10 minutes. En bas, on va parler des objectifs de développement durable, et en haut, on a un panel sur les données ouvertes et la nuit.
Montréal, au sommet de la nuit. Une impossible.
en a un là tantôt pendant la conférence.
Ah, le voilà. Le voilà. On peut l'attendre qu'il prenne son café.
And le voilà. Okay.
Le voilà.
Very,
Here he
very
is.
good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Et voilà. Bonjour, hi, as we say in Montreal. So the idea for this is we started this in Berlin at Stadtnacht conference, Stadtnacht, which means cities after 8. You were there, I think, and you were not there yet. Well, you will be there probably in this year. Yes.
Okay.
So the idea, this is Diana Rizelis, originally from
Hello.
Boston, living in Berlin, working with Vibe Mirik and Lutz. Maybe you can say a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah. Along with being the research lead for Vibe Lab, this is so funny to talk to all of you into a mic when we're nice and close, but we're doing this because there's an online stream, and so we're speaking to all the folks watching at home. Yeah.
The millions of people.
Yeah,
watching at home,
exactly,
yes.
exactly. But part of my interest in doing this workshop today is that my background is as a theater director and producer, and also training in community organizing and public policy. And I think a lot of the work that we do, everybody who's here at this conference, is sort of translation between those worlds, between the people that make culture, the people that experience culture after dark, and the people that make decisions about cities. And so I think that this tool of the SDGs is actually a pretty powerful one to kind of make that translation, to make that jump. And so this is kind of an experiment of a workshop to try out this tool, to spend a little time with it, and then also just reflect as a group of how this works to use in your cities.
And funny thing is, I'm an ex-child actor too, so I have the same background, and I dressed to match with
Yeah,
Diana,
yeah.
and turns out we have the same watch.
I don't have glitter shoes. I'm really regretting
You know.
not preparing this way. But hopefully, yeah.
Yes, and maybe what's peculiar about the organization Montréal 24/24 is we are a civic organization. We're not a consultancy firm or representatives of different association, bars, restaurants. So we really want to put the focus on the citizen. And I think it ties back to this idea of citizen participation and the SDGs. So I'll let you start maybe a little presentation we have. Yes.
There we go. Okay, fantastic. So can we just do a quick round? I think probably most all of you know each other, but I was going to do raise your hands if. But maybe we can just do a quick round of names. Can I start over here?
Yeah, I'll give you the mic.
My name is Lina.
And which organization or city are you coming from?
I'm from Quebec.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Quebec City.
Excellent. So part of the city category above. Beautiful.
No, she doesn't work for the city. You don't work for the city.
Ah, fantastic.
Which
Okay.
one are you in there? You think?
Beautiful. Next.
Okay. Yes, my name is Emmanuel Ray with the City of Ottawa. We're working on developing our own nightlife economy strategy. So this is very timely and really enjoying the learnings. And I think there's a lot that the City of Ottawa can do to help bridge culture and social spaces and of course the economic argument as well. So there's a lot of different aspects of sustainability. Will be an important topic. Thank you.
Fantastic. Cool.
Thank you. I'm Ciara Power. I'm a PhD researcher in Queen's University Belfast, researching electronic dance music scenes in Belfast and Dublin. I'm also the lead researcher with the nightlife organisation in Northern Ireland, Free the Night. And I'm also a raver. So I would say I fall into the advocate, researcher and participant category.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I'm Boyd Slater. I'm the co-founder of Free the Night, and I would probably fall into that advocate and participant category.
Beautiful.
Hey, I'm Kwende Kafense. I live in the city of Ottawa. I used to work for the city of Ottawa, so I'm formerly city, I guess. But now I would say that I'm sort of creative / advocate in terms of working with the Music Industry Coalition and the work that we're doing / researcher / media, because I run a radio station.
Multi-hyphenate. Thank you.
Giulia from Trento, Italy. I'm a member of the City Councillor and meilleures, so city advocates and participants. Okay.
Awesome.
Great. Well, I'm Mathieu. I'm an advocate, definitely, I think. But we work with the city, so I'm not as wild advocate as I used to be. Sometimes I need to. I mean, we're partners with the city, so.
Nice. And just very quickly, folks seeing the SDGs, give me like a 1, 2, or a 3. Just show me on your hands, how familiar are you with these? 1, super duper familiar. 3, I don't know what these are. 2, I've heard of these things. This graphic looks familiar. Now you're at 4. You're cool. All right. So we'll go into a little bit of what these are. But first, before we do,
so maybe the first question we can ask is we often talk about misconceptions, stigmas, or misperception of what the night is. So maybe we could just do a little quick round of what type of stigma you've heard, and give us an example of a stigma you know about about the night. Yes. You want to start? You can start, Boyd. All right.
Yeah, I think there's lots of stigmas about the night. I think one of the things is that it's not important culturally, that's not recognized as culture. And I think that it's not just, I think that's the people who use dance floors that need to recognize it as culture, and then they need to advocate better to council or to government, because I think I said this yesterday, but you can't put the blame on people who don't take part in something. Yeah. They are people who want to understand generally, but they just don't. And I think that's it, and it's up to us to advocate well for that in some way.
Cool. Okay, so actually seeing nightlife as culture. Yeah, what else?
I would say that, I think there's a perception that nightlife is sort of separate and distinct from what happens in the daytime. And I think that, that's I think that that's something that, or we need to understand them as a continuum.
Okay. Oh, nice. I like that. Yeah.
I think while alcohol culture is inherently linked with nightlife, like nightlife is so much more than just going out and, getting hammered, basically. But there's a lot of other functions of it, and this is particularly to the transport argument as well. We've shift workers who work in the night. We have people who need that kind of infrastructure in there to be able to continue with their jobs. There are people who also work in the night, and it's not just in the daytime. So I think, a lot of the challenges that we have in Northern Ireland at the moment is to try and help, people in government understand that there are other functions of the night than just people going out and using it for alcohol purposes.
Yeah, I think you're saying 2 important things of seeing nightlife as different from or a part of the nighttime economy, and also not seeing nightlife as synonymous with alcohol. Yeah, nice. Other things we want to add? Yeah, right behind you.
Just very lightly, just to build on that as well. It's not necessarily all about more bars and more nightclubs. So that's what I've certainly taken a lot of. It's cultural connections. It's art. It's really a chance for communities to get together and do things in a different way. And it's not always about the daytime economy. And so
nice. Yes. No. Cool. So I think part of the, you're saying that I think the users of the nighttime, the people who are spending time in cities at night, also need to do a better job sort of recognizing the gifts that are going on, and then also storytelling about it. So it's this concept of like how we frame what goes on at night, how we don't just tell the sort of sticky stories about the bad things that happen at night, the nuisance or alcohol or whatever, but actually showcase the sort of socially and culturally really valuable things that are going on. So there's this American environmentalist and systems thinker named Donella Meadows, and she has this very influential essay called Leverage Points, and talks about if you want to make, I'm going to do this, if you want to make systems change, where do you intervene? And this is sort of a simplified graphic because this is a rather complex article, but she has sort of 4 different categories of 12 different layers, so I won't go through all of them, but I think the what we've been talking a lot about in these last day and a half or so are the parameters, the sort of mechanical characteristics of a system, the policies. I think this is where agent of change falls, for example, or curfew hours, or the sort of regulations that we often are very deep in our work. But in her view, this is the least influential point to intervene in a system. She talks next about feedbacks, the interactions in a system that drive it. So creating sort of virtuous cycles or vicious cycles, how things kind of amplify or slow each other down. She then talks about design. This is the next sort of most influential place to intervene in a system. The social structures, the institutions, like Montreal 24/24, like all of the nighttime advocacy entities that are starting to exist that drive it. But most influential of all is, come on, intent, the values, the goals, and the worldviews of the system that shape what actually is going on. So in descending order to the most important, the goals, the mindset, and the ability to actually transcend the paradigms. So I think we have all very clearly recognized what's the paradigm, what's the way we talk about night, what's the way that night is respected or valued or not, and to go beyond that. So this is a complicated way of essentially saying, to make change the stories that a system tells about itself, and then everything else follows. So I think what I was hearing a lot of yesterday was the need to convince people first that night is of value, that we want to do something about it, that we want to create structures that value this as we should. But we're often beginning with the parameters. We're starting with the sort of mechanical stuff rather than the storytelling. So in a way, this workshop is about the SDGs, but it's sort of a Trojan horse. I think this is really about storytelling of the night. So, you want to add anything before I jump into this?
Well, it just really resonates with, I think, what we've been doing for the last 5 years with the organization, with Montréal 24/24. You know, before that, in Montreal, there were, it's still there, you can still see it. There's little signs that says, it's like a play on two words in French that mean, one word in French that has two meanings. It's about night, but also means nuisance. So it says at night, noise is a nuisance, you know, la nuit, le bruit nuit. And this was the main point that in the last 10 years we've discussed in Montreal about this, and it was the only way people talked about the night. So we're trying to open up a new narrative, a new story about the night, and telling it differently, hopefully to convince people that you know, what we want to do is legit, you know. So.
Yeah, so to jump into what these SDGs actually are. So you may have seen this graphic before or see these colorful little boxes on all kinds of city initiatives, NGOs, and so on and so forth. So you might also hear these called the Agenda 2030 or the Global Goals. So this is the slate of 17 very ambitious goals that the 193 member states of the UN have agreed upon trying to reach these by 2030. So every one of these boxes has sort of sub-targets and indicators. It gets quite technical, but you can see just from the names of each of these that it covers really a very wide definition of sustainability. It has the sort of environmental sustainability angle with responsible management and stewardship of water, of land, and you know, energy use and so on, but we're also talking about good work and economic growth. We're talking about reducing inequality, about promoting gender equality, about abolishing poverty and hunger. So it's you know, it's an ambitious slate. And I think what's powerful about this is that this is the biggest global consensus of how we want to proceed going forward to 2030, that your country, likely your city or your region, has already signed on to this. So you can probably already access your city's SDG plan, its reports, and so on. So there's a way to kind of tap into, rather than push against to get something else on the agenda or on the table, to say we're already doing this. Hello, I'm pushing the wrong button, that's why. Okay.
So this was adopted in 2015. It's a 15,000 words resolution that was adopted at the UN. But the word culture is there only 5 times, and the word arts and night does not even appear in this 15,000 words manifesto. That's probably why when people think about the SDGs, they think about green economy. They think about ending poverty in third world. And so when we start talking about the SDGs in relation to nightlife, people are a bit skeptical. Where is this going? What is this? So.
But my sort of crazy conviction here is that whether or not you know this or whether or not you word it this way, whatever you're doing in nightlife actually is already feeding into these goals. And so we've sort of reorganized these in a way that kind of thematically clusters with a lot of conversations that are already going on in nightlife. So the first one being health and safety. So this is goal 3, good health and well-being. And I think it's very easy to connect this to the harm reduction kinds of initiatives, drug checking, so on, also venue safety, and mental health sorts of initiatives within the music and the nightlife industry. This next one, clustering together gender equality, decent work and economic growth, and reducing inequality, I think really speaks to a lot of the gender equality and social inclusion initiatives that exist around pay equality, about representation on our stages and in our organizations, leadership. And, I think what's at the core of so much of this work we do is creating really inclusive spaces where people feel a sense of belonging in their city and in their community. This next one, goals 7 and 12, responsible consumption and production, affordable and clean energy, really speaks to the sort of green sustainability work that goes on, I think especially in the festival angle of this sector. And I want to particularly highlight goal 11, this sustainable cities and communities. People call this for short the urban SDG, and chances are good that if you look at the sort of indicators within it, you'll see quite a lot of resonances in what you're doing in terms of people feeling safe at night in the cities as they walk around, in terms of people feeling they have access to public space, to transit, and so on. And I think that also really speaks to the peace, justice, and strong institutions goes hand in hand. I think also this morning's conversation really drives that point home. And then finally, the last one is partnerships for the goals. It's partnering across national borders. It's partnering across industry and sector borders. And I think it goes without saying that that's what we do every single day.
Yeah, the idea of placing this workshop right after the Ukrainian blocked segment is because I think, in my understanding, nightlife is an indicator and a vector of the development of democracy in a society and human rights. You cannot have the nightlife. Well, nightlife entails some sort of freedom at night that usually. Sometimes you think that the productive day does not give you, but you cannot have a sustainable or great nightlife in an authoritarian regime. So you need this freedom and these democratic values to be there. But what we can see is that there's already a lot of things that we're doing that are at par with the different SDGs. So when we talk about harm reduction, yesterday we had a presentation by Julie Soleil from the it's the dependent people. It's like social workers who work with people with a dependency. When she was talking about how to collaborate for a healthy, festive, and harm reduction. There was a harm reduction last week that was going on. And then in terms of gender equality and social inclusion, there's the organization, it's an international organization called She Said So, and they're giving a talk, a panel later this afternoon today. When we talk about sustainable resource users, there's an organization that's pretty cool in Berlin called Club Liebe that does the same thing in Montreal. Already you've noticed maybe here in this venue there is no plastic bottles, water bottles. This has been prohibited. And tomorrow's night at the venue at SAT, you will notice that there is no plastic cups either. There is a reusable plastic cups, and I will ask you to pay a $2 deposit for your cup and to bring back your cup every time you want a new drink, and they will serve it in the same cup again. That's to avoid plastic waste, In terms of mobility and public space, we had Le Pierrot de la Nuit yesterday, and of course, when we talk about promoting creativity, innovation, and entrepreneurship, well, this is what we're pretty much been doing since yesterday. So.
Nice. And then
we can have some quick examples of how stuff we say match with the SDGs. So, we've been trying to fight off the 3 a.m. curfew in Montreal. And part of the reason why we want to do this is because DJs have so little time to play that the wages are shitty, So I had a lot of friends who had to move to Berlin for a couple of months in the summer to earn a living, and because then they come back here, they make $100 and play at the in a pub, So so providing decent work and economic growth, it's going to create jobs if we push off this curfew. And also nightlife, we've seen it during COVID when everything was closed. There was a lot of mental health issues because by not having access to nightlife, you did not have access to socialization space. And for a lot of communities, especially marginalized communities, these spaces in nightlife are sometimes they play the role of a chosen family. We can talk about the LGBTQ community, for instance. And in terms of peace and institution, we had a great example just right before with Ukraine. And in terms of partnerships, well, this is again what we're doing today. We're doing knowledge transfer. We're trying to share practices and learn from that. So.
Nice, thank you. So, why the SDGs? So the examples that Matthew just gave, this is a beautiful way of connecting things that we're already talking about to these existing goals. And I think there's nothing revolutionary about that, but the idea of putting this into the context of and the language of something that policymakers maybe make more sense of, rather than, if the idea of this curfew and the way that it impacts artistic creation, the way that it impacts jobs, is maybe not a connection that is commonly understood by those who are not deeply in the issues of this sector and this space. So this is an example of sort of reframing the story, but I think even more than that as well, no country, no city, no region is on track to reach the SDGs by 2030. We're working towards these super ambitious goals, but we're not there yet. And so, I think nightlife practitioners, nightlife advocates, creators have these kinds of gifts and skills that are really necessary to work faster towards the slate of goals that are so urgent to reach. And so there's another concept that I want to bring up called ABCD, asset-based community development. And there's lots of resources you can look at this online on worksheets, but at the core of it, the idea is we tend to try to make change and address problems by going directly to the problem, by looking at the deficits, looking at all the stuff that is imperfect, the short nights, the lack of funding, the whatever. And asset-based community development, ABCD, asks us to flip that. It asks us to look first at what are the gifts in your community? What are the strengths? What are the existing institutions? Who are the people who are really well connected, sort of naturally, whether they know it or they mean to or not? What are the institutions that you have to work with? And using those strengths to leverage then all the what you need to work towards those wicked problems, those challenges. And I think especially when I think about the kinds of talents and skills that are in this room, in this community, I think artists and people working around culture are amazing at creating powerful experiences that are shared, creating a sense of community and a sense of belonging across people who are very different from each other. Maybe even, though it sounds utopian, envisioning some other kind of possible future, that even in the event this weekend, this is a world where we don't use single-use plastic, period. That in itself is an audacious vision. And so I think those are exactly the kinds of skills, the spaces where we convene people, the platforms that we use to accomplish more of these goals. So I think it kind of works both ways, these SDGs. These are things that we need to be working on. Not all of our festivals are zero carbon footprint, not near. But we also have quite a lot of power to amplify what we're already doing that's good.
Also, I think as advocates, and there's a lot of advocates here in the room, it's important to master a positive lexicon, because if you keep hammering the same negative talking about the same problems. At some point, people become tone deaf about it, and you're perceived as just somebody who whines and complains all the time and is not happy. So being able to put the light on the bright and positive things that we can bring, and it's positive change, sometimes it can lend a better ear from your partners. And for instance, the Tourism Association in Montreal is unveiling this summer a sustainable tourism policy. So it's like, aha, you want to talk about sustainability? All right, nightlife is a sustainable thing, you know, and then we can partner up with them. And even for them, the first time they talk, their policy is a lot about, you know, green economy and stuff like that. And then it's like, no, you open a new door of consciousness for these people, and it adds to the richness and the depth of what they're trying to say.
So I want to sort of get a little bit active. I know there's been a lot of listening in the last day and a half. So I'd like to ask you all to grab something to write with, whether that's the back page of your program and a pencil, or whether that's just the Notes app on your phone.
Or if you don't have, you can always use the Slido thing. If you select this activity, you can write something on it, and everyone can see what you're doing. So.
And just take about 60 seconds or so to jot down a couple of notes to answer this question. It doesn't have to be perfect. So what's one thing that you're really proud of in your city at night? What's one thing that's a strength? And then also, what's one challenge or block or area for growth? And that can be in the city's nightlife as a whole. That can be in something in your work. Just take a minute now. Everybody got something? Need a couple more seconds? I'm going to ask you all now to take a look around the room and make eye contact with somebody that you haven't yet had a conversation with in the last 2 days. Get with that person now. Go introduce yourself and just briefly share the things that you came up with.
Hey, no, we haven't had much yet. How are you? You're right. Yes.
I'm happy to see you from Ottawa.
Yeah.
So what's the thing you're really proud of?
Yeah. I got the feel. I'm up to take about 20 seconds to finish up your sentence, your last thought. Cool. Nice. We're going to keep talking about all these things. So I just want to bring us back quickly and hear a couple things. What's coming up? Can I go first to you guys? I put you on the spot. Yeah?
Me, for example, when I was speaking about Montreal, what I really liked is the spontaneity in the city and the fact that I think the night comes from the bottom to the top. And I think this is really valuable. And I don't know if you want to...
Yeah, and what I'm proud of is the fact that many times in my city, to enjoy a night out, you just gather with people. We just gather together, maybe drink something, but we don't need big events and big clubs and big stuff, but we just stay together and connect with each other.
So sort of spontaneity and sort of bottom up for both of you. That's beautiful. What else? What else came up?
Want to say something? Yeah.
So I kind of spoke about what I'm proud of, particularly with Belfast, is that historically dance floor culture was able to bring people together who were in their everyday lives killing each other, you know, at some point, and was acting as like a vital peace and conflict tool at the tail end of the Troubles in Northern Ireland. But on the flip side of that, the challenge is that, you know, people outside of that bubble haven't recognised that cultural importance of dance floor culture and recognise that as that kind of vital peace and conflict tool. And I think that's what like a lot of the work that I'm doing and in my own research is that to demonstrate the relationship between, you know, dance floor culture and social resilience.
Nice, beautiful. So it's a peace building tool. Yes.
Yeah, and me, well, I'm really proud. Quebec City is a really, really small city, so I feel very safe in the city. Whatever time it is in the night, I can walk around and feel safe. So that's a thing that I'm proud. But one of the challenges, we have a very conservative mentality. Mm-hmm. Like to change something, it's very hard. So we have to work much work. Yeah. Sorry. So that's it. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. And you can also feel absolutely free to respond in French, and we're going to switch on the translator.
Ouais, c'est vrai, mais if we can trust it.
What's some other stuff that came up? Folks up here?
It's the same as Kira, really. I mean, it was quite funny when you were saying that because I find that dance floors in Belfast are incredibly diverse places, and there's a real sense of community in those spaces. But the problem outside of that, of the blockage, is apathy. You know, our government has been so, like, we don't even have a government at the minute in Northern Ireland. They won't form. So the sort of the feeling from general public can be, oh, there's no change. And so what I was thinking about is that apathy is an issue, and also momentum, because we have something going now. Can we keep the momentum of that? You know, can we find the funding to do what we need to do? Can we bring people on board and keep them engaged in what we need to do? Yeah.
We have two people from Ottawa. It would be interesting to hear you. You want to say something, Emmanuel?
Yeah, for sure. Very, very proud that the City of Ottawa is moving forward on a nightlife economy strategy and really studying this opportunity to bridge the community. And it started a few years ago, actually. Our mayor led a delegation to Amsterdam and was just really impressed with how Amsterdam manages the nightlife economy. And so I think there's an opportunity for Ottawa to really recognize and champion and look at and see what's happening in our community. How can we foster our community and bring people together and really make the nightlife economy as great as it could be, and that's what I see for a vision for the future, is really a strong nightlife economy that is good for residents, is good for visitors, and got all types of benefits that we need to look at. So very, very happy that the city's looking at that, and that's moving forward.
Cool. You want to build on that?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we talked about was just being proud of the movement that we've seen, but we've developed with Time Code. We've been doing dance floor, like underground dance floor events since 2005, and sort of so that whole run and sort of the growth that we've seen, not just in the audience, because we've grown from doing events with like 200 people to like warehouse events with like 1,500 people, and seeing the way that that community has grown, but then also the community of actors has grown. So there's way more young people doing club nights, doing big nights, doing really dope things in unconventional places. And I think I'm also proud of sort of like how independent and sort of weird the nightlife scene is in Ottawa. It's decidedly not corporate, partially because of the scale of the city and the sort of different kinds of investment or non-investment that's there. So people are really just making it work in a range of different ways. That's really cool.
What about a challenge you face in Ottawa? Or blockade? Or?
I mean, I think that part of what we're trying to assess with some of the research that we're doing is whether it's sort of like structural or whether it's or it has to do with attitudes, I guess. Like, you know what I'm saying? And sort of like how sort of the relationship between those things. I think the city is really expanding in it's expanding right now in a really interesting way. And I think that there's an opportunity there to understand how we can engage sort of like new audiences within the city. And I think that that's part of the challenge, is that the city is sort of like this is what I meant by structural thing. It's so diffuse spatially that it's really challenging to get all of those people engaged with things that are happening only in generally in one specific part of town, right? And so there's all these people who could be potentially engaged with all of this stuff, but like they can't, there was no way prior to this for them to even access it without like huge effort. You know what I'm saying? And so just being able to sort of reduce the barrier between people's access to this culture. And that's not just physical access, but it's also informational access. I think that's one of the biggest challenges, is that we sort of have a weird local information ecosystem. And so it's hard for people to actually access just the points of information about what's going on.
Yeah, it was easier before when we had the culture newspapers.
Exactly. Well, exactly.
There was a calendar of what's going on this week.
Exactly.
Now everything is spread out on the internet.
It's so
and
diffused now, and so it's super challenging. And that's something that's actually a challenge that we're sort of looking to address through my new work at the radio station, and sort of like addressing the information ecosystem component of it, because I think that's a big challenge.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you bring up two really important points that I think are also worth highlighting for other cities. Is one is like, what is going on in the underground that can be shared, can be highlighted or celebrated, while still being a bit delicate about letting what's underground or what's not seen remain that way. But also, I think this concept that you bring up of like the missing pieces of how you find your way to nightlife. This was something that really came up in Creative Footprint Stockholm, of how people just find out about what's going on. And so I think that's also something to celebrate. If you have a fantastic listings website or fantastic social media, like that's often like a real big success that I think maybe people overlook. But it's also such an important piece of the infrastructure of that goes along with the physical ecosystem. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, for me, for Montreal, it's really the strength of the underground culture that we have. It's been built for over 30, 40 years. So there's a big social interaction. So when people get together, we have things like are happening right now. So I'm really, really proud. And when you go out with the community, the friends, I think it's rich for the city. The flip side is residents have a lot of complaints for sound. We have a lot of problems with sound. Those problems are really stopping development. So that's the laws have to be put in. So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Cool. So I actually think that's a nice segue to the next piece here. So grab your paper or your notes or your whatever, and just take a minute to yourself, and then start to chat with your partner about this next question. Of the strength or the challenge that you identified, go ahead.
You go. No.
Which SDGs might connect to that? And you can go much deeper into this. We won't go into the targets and indicators today. That's a bit beyond. But just on the face of it, what might connect? What might you be able to measure? What might you be able to highlight? Exactly. Your steps are good. You're like, check. This is taken care of. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. To it. Yeah. So I'll be around. Were you participating? Yes. Raise your hand if you think you need like one more minute, or are you ready to go? Cool. I'd like to hear a little bit about what resonated and what you heard. I heard you guys picking out specific numbers over here. Can I start with you? You're like, yeah, 16.
It's the lotto.
16's good.
It's the lotto.
What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the positives or the things that I'm proud of, I definitely would say 16, and then 10 because historically it was really able to bring peace, and it did reduce inequalities, particularly between different classes and people when they came together. Were kind of able to forget that there was conflict going on. But then I also think there's a twofold to that, because it's still like unequal, the dance floor in terms of gender inequality. And then also number 17 as well, I think is a challenge. There's not enough people working together in communities and also within the government to try and push nightlife agendas.
Is it okay if I speak French?
Oui, oui, vas-y.
Merci. It will be easier for me. Pour la chose que je trouve forte, j'avais nommé la sécurité. Donc, merci. Ça va être le numéro 16, Peace, Justice and Strong Institution, que j'avais dit. Sinon, pour le challenge, moi, j'y allais beaucoup. Le challenge était la mentalité très conservatrice à Québec. Donc, moi, j'y allais avec le numéro 17. Ça y va, la trans... Ouais, c'est pas...
Donald Trump got in there, but
Ah non, pour vrai? Non. Donc, j'irai avec le numéro 17, Partnership for the Goal, parce que je trouve que, justement, à Québec, on est très fermé dans nos mentalités, on s'écoute peu, et avec une pensée très conservatrice, on pense beaucoup à nos besoins individuels plutôt que les besoins collectifs. Et je crois que c'est quelque chose qu'on devrait changer à Québec.
I think it worked. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a beautiful example of 17 of also working across language and making space for multiple forms of expression. Beautiful. Thank you both. What else? What other goals? Maybe in addition to 10, to 16, to 17. Who had something else? Couple things.
Yeah, one of the things that wasn't on the sort of nightclub goals is the poverty factor. Northern Ireland and Belfast is, it's a poor place, and you talk about the sort of ability to create social housing for people, and also to have space for culture to exist when you're trying to have social housing. And I think one of the challenges for Belfast is that they're not creating that affordable housing for people. They're creating more apartments that they charge people lots of money for, and that doesn't help the issues of poverty. And one of the things I said is like putting a roof over somebody's head is actually more important than having a club space. But those two things should be able to coexist. Yeah, and I think that's it. It's that idea of there are other things that need to be thought about in a city, and especially when poverty is number one on that list, and certainly something that in Northern Ireland people have always been thinking about. Social justice. Social justice is a huge thing, and sort of the civil rights for people and the ability to have that housing is just really important.
Yes, the things that are fundamental first on the hierarchy of needs. Yes.
For us, I mean, for what I was talking about, like in terms of industry innovation and infrastructure, as far as sort of information and media, and so trying to, in terms of the challenge that I talked about and the media ecosystem, looking at the various sort of components of our media industry locally, trying to innovate and develop new kinds of infrastructure.
For the problems that we have for the sound complaints and so on, it's definitely quality education. I think the agent of changement is really key here for us to enable everybody to understand where we are and link everybody together so they understand what the problem is, and then we can find real solutions. So,
Which I think connects also probably to 16, 17 sort of civic participation.
Did we mention 11? Did 11 came up? Yeah, okay.
Over here?
I mean, both for strength and challenge, I think. Because, for example, I'm talking about the challenge, I think we really have a problem of accessibility to the night, that it has to do with physical infrastructures, but also a lot with social barriers. So, to make an example, many times to go out, you already need to have friends, and maybe someone is not able to enjoy the nightlife because of that. So, sometimes I'm afraid that when we advocate for nightlife, we advocate only for the needs of the people that already are inside the nightlife. So we need to, if we want to create like a good nightlife for everyone, we need to make the voices of those people that are not able already to live the nightlife more loud and create this kind of community also in this sense.
I think also in terms of 11 sustainable cities and communities, what Martin was mentioning, he was proud of the underground has been developed here in 40 years, and I was saying that I think I'm proud of the importance of nightlife in the historical development of the city. Well, that's a great example of a sustainable community. That probably you have this type of example in your own city also, in a way. So, productive.
It has been, like, in terms of, like, all kinds of artists that have
Yes.
from, like, you know, Montreal and sort of the platform of being a DJ or a producer or a musician in Montreal. I think that's, like, I know that, like, for my, like, I know that for artists in Ottawa, like, you know, for some of them, like, you know, playing at places in Montreal is like is a stage in their career.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so the idea that, you know, that Montreal has this nightlife that is seen as a platform and that also is really productive, that, like, there have been a lot of great artists that have come through here that have been you know, had great nights here, et cetera, right?
C'est un tremplin pour certaines peuples. Un tremplin pour des artistes. I don't know what the English word is. Trampoline? Okay.
A springboard?
Yeah, springboard. Yes, it's a springboard. It's a springboard for our artists. Yeah. Yes.
I think also, like, it's important to acknowledge that a lot of what we do can be quite evanescent. Like, I think of an incredible sort of queer cabaret performance space that existed in Chicago every single Monday for 6 years straight. And this was somebody's second job. And I think about how many careers it launched as a springboard, things like that. And it's over. And I think it's not something that was well documented. You know, nobody wrote about it in a paper. There's a handful of press. But I think it's so important to record these things, to showcase these things in order to really show this value and to tell this story. So that brings me to, I think, the last step here. To take a moment to consider, and I might ask you to team up. So in like, take your pair, find another pair, talk in a trio or a four about how the good stuff that you're identifying might be better communicated, or what kinds of experiments or little pilot projects you might undertake to address the challenges of a sort of conservative mindset or not enough kind of, you know, political energy, as Boyd was identifying, or so on. What might be tried? So take a couple minutes now.
Thank you. Hiatus. I'm glad you're here. Exactly. Now I've got two.
We're going to next city next weekend, and we're going to Ottawa, and hopefully we're going to get to New York. Yeah, Boston next, and then we might. Maybe at the UN. Yeah, if they can get back there. To Diana.
Cool. So, yeah, I think.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up.
Nice.
And we have lunch upstairs. Sat on Sunday, and you know. Manager of the venue in front, John. Some good people.
Yeah.
You need a little bit more time, like 1 more minute. Okay. Let's come back and discuss
the projects you're all about to undertake.
Yes, I'm really looking forward to see if some projects were brought up or experiments that could address some of the challenges we discussed earlier. So,
what's exciting in this group? What are you excited to try out? What can you imagine?
Yeah, we're trying to pull together a consortium of actors in the information space. I run this broadcaster. We've been around since '75, so we have a long legacy of promoting under like a sort of alternative information. But we're trying to sort of renew that legacy by building partnerships with other people who are now in the blogging space and other kinds of information spaces to sort of to take something that we used to publish as far as a alternative newspaper and sort of bring it back to life in a different sort of form so that we can be promoting the information about alternative culture.
Was there anything here that was exciting? Good. How could we better communicate the good stuff or get projects? Oh, we got somebody upstairs.
Somebody's here. So I was a bit referring to the idea of how can we communicate a bit better to stakeholders who are not part of the community and understand better. And maybe it needs to be addressed also at events. I mean, we are good in doing events. And so maybe we have to also, let's say the events that address a larger group, maybe need to be a bit more conversation opening. So maybe there is a night market that addresses also an audience that doesn't go to clubs, but there you can maybe have a wall or an info table where people can go to and ask questions, and you kind of start a dialogue or discussion about something. Or you can also invite neighbors to come to that table if you have questions or something. So I think we're good in doing events, so why not using it to bring people together and think much more about this and less about social media and press and things like this.
Yeah, nice. So these kinds of like opening up club space, opening up nighttime and making it a bit more, bringing it into the day, also recognizing that it is this continuum. What else?
Sorry, in French again.
Yeah.
Je suis venue ici. Oui.
Hold for translation, please.
Yep.
Cool.
I'm going to try not to mention Trump again, sorry. Moi, je suis venue ici, en fait, avec une idée claire en tête pour la Ville de Québec, avec une amie. Nous, notre but, c'est de créer un peu un Montréal 24-24, mais à Québec, pour favoriser le dialogue, justement, avec la ville, avec la communauté, et pouvoir créer un peu ce qui a été créé ailleurs dans le monde, qu'est-ce que je comprends. Puis nous, c'est notre idée de faire un peu cette organisation-là, de créer cette organisation de Québec la nuit. Que nous, c'est ça.
Beautiful. And you've got the strength of this whole international scene also to draw upon. Wonderful.
I kind of had an idea which I got from Helsinki. I can't remember exactly who the organisation was that put on the initiative, but they had an exhibition of the history of electronic music in the city, and I would love to have something similar done in Belfast that was maybe funded by the Arts Council and kind of have it that is available for the government to go to, available for the public to go to, just so they can really understand really what we see in our bubble as just a way to translate it.
Beautiful. Anybody else want to share something? Yeah.
Yeah, similar to what Kira said. I mean, we've had an event quite recently where, you know, we put on, showcase local artists and brought politicians along to it and people from the departments and asked them to come along. And also there's a little bit of a talk at the beginning, but we want to steer away from saying the same thing over and over again to people. So, you know, it is about bringing them and involving them in the culture. But also I think, you know, what we're seeing and what we're hearing from lots of people is that when they've brought city officials to another country to see what they can do, that really engages with them. But what we don't want to have is exactly the same across all these places. And the first thing we said was Amsterdam and Berlin. It's like it's always Amsterdam and Berlin, you know. But there's something in that, you know, in terms of saying to your council, like, let's do it better than Amsterdam and Berlin. And I think healthy competition between cities would be really good. Let's have competition. Let's see who can do this best. You know, if we could make it a bit like that and have that healthy competition and have it like, let's try and beat each other each time, then you can get sort of government involved in that as well, saying we want to be the best city. You know, Belfast just got UNESCO City of Music, so that's the next 5 years is about trying to make it the best place for music. And yeah, we want to be better than Berlin.
Bring it on.
I think it's a good way to end this workshop.
Cool. So in terms of like next steps, this workshop is still something of an experiment. We're still, I think, learning how to connect these goals to the work. And so I'm curious afterwards, I'd love your thoughts and your feedback about what would you need next? Like what kind of information would you like next in order to build upon the conversation that we started here today? And also in terms of next steps, like this is a theme that we are, as Vibe Lab on this side, are excited to keep building into all of our work. And so if this is something that you like to explore, if there's a particular goal that speaks to you, either what we talked about today or more, talk to me, because we have initiatives related to live streaming and community radio, related to physical space, related to safety at night. And I think there's opportunities to keep furthering this connection and making it more visible. And yeah, on Montreal side.
Well, I know we're going to be doing Creative Footprint next year, so maybe, you know, it's we can explore this from Montreal, but I think it's part of the DNA of the organization. We are a community-driven association, so I mean, it's the discussion will be there. So, thank you all for coming out for this workshop. We're gonna have an hour break. We can come back at 2. We're gonna have Gleb Divov from Vilnius, Lithuania, who's gonna connect with us virtually and tell us about the Republic of the Užupis. It's an innovative idea, project, part of neighborhood, so don't miss that. Thank you.
Impossible.